Hello and welcome back to the Mayor's Roundtable. I'm your Mayor, Gracey Van Der Mark, and with me here today we have a special guest. We have Jessica Kelley from the Homeless Task Force. Welcome, Jessica, and although you and I have worked together significantly and we communicate all the time, and I understand how much work you put into what you do, our community may not be as aware, so why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and some of the work that you do here in Huntington Beach for us?
Absolutely. So about 10 years ago, I was working for a nonprofit and we started to see a rise in homeless families. And we did what we could, but I knew that I wanted to do more. The issue of homelessness is something I've always been very passionate about. So I went back to school for social work. And when I finished school, I started out as an outreach case manager. So I started out at street level, going out, meeting people, learning what their barriers were. So that was for a nonprofit, and actually one of the cities I was assigned to was Huntington Beach. I worked in several of the central cities. I was able to make a lot of connections and meet a lot of people. But when the city decided to hire their own social workers and social services supervisor, I was very excited. I wanted to come back, so I applied for both positions. In November of 2022, I started here as a social worker. And then in April of 2023, I accepted the social services supervisor position. And I'm very happy to say that as of today, I've accepted the manager of homeless and behavioral health position.
So since you've been with us, you've had three different positions.
Yes.
And even before that, you already had a lot of knowledge with some of our challenges here with the homelessness. So that's very beneficial for us.
Absolutely.
So here in Huntington Beach, we've been leading the way with some of our services and initiatives. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when we're looking at homelessness, it's a very complicated issue. It's multifaceted. So we can't have a single approach and expect that to work. We also have to have a multifaceted approach to the issue. So what we're doing here in Huntington Beach is we are trying to address all the barriers. We're trying to look at the issue of homelessness from every angle, and that's the reason that we've been so successful. So the first and biggest component of our system of care here is our Huntington Beach Navigation Center. This is that immediate response for the basic needs, for safety, for shelter, getting off the streets, hygiene, having a place to shower, having a place to sleep, having a place to have a meal. And
at the Navigation Center.
At the Navigation Center, yes. So that's the biggest component of our system of care. And then we also have our homeless outreach social workers. They are city employees. We have 2 full-time social workers and 1 part-time case manager. We have our Huntington Beach Task Force officers. So we have 4 officers that are specifically trained to work with the population. So they're going out, they're engaging people, they're learning their stories, they're constant interaction with them. They're connecting them to services, and they're also providing the safety piece and answering the community concerns. We also have our HB Cares, which is our volunteer program. Our CARES coordinator is currently overseeing 18 volunteers, and what they're doing is answering our outreach line. So if people are needing to get in touch with us for services, they can just call that number, and they're getting very quick responses. 5 days a week, we have people answering that line. They also go into our Navigation Center and provide different activities.
HB Cares?
The HB Cares, and connect with several of the local faith-based groups and nonprofits. So we're really, and then we have our Be Well Mobile Crisis Response Team. So we have to recognize that when we're talking about homelessness, there are challenges with mental health, there are challenges with substance abuse. So because we have our own Be Well Mobile Crisis Response Team, they can be dispatched out by those calls that are coming into the police department. They can go, they can provide that immediate support. They have 2 crisis interventionists on the vans, and when they're fully staffed, they're here 21 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can take somebody immediately to detox or to a crisis stabilization unit, and by doing that, they're freeing up time for our first responders who can actually be available for the emergencies that they're needed for.
Okay, and one of the questions that we receive all the time is the Navigation Center. Does everybody that enters the Navigation Center, do they have connections to the city of Huntington Beach? And if you do, what kind of connections are we looking at?
Yes, absolutely. So everybody who's going into our Navigation Center is screened by our city social workers or our HB task force officers. You have to have strong ties to the city, which means you have to have lived here within the last 5 years, have your support system here, your family's here, you're part of the community here, or you're currently working here. If you've been homeless longer than 5 years, then your last address would need to be in Huntington Beach in order to qualify for the Navigation Center. And then we also screen, we make sure nobody has any felony warrants, 290 charges, or arson charges.
Okay, and you mentioned that we have dedicated social workers here in Huntington Beach. What does the typical day look like for one of our social workers?
Yes, so our social workers are doing the most. They are going out at street level to all the hot spots, finding people, meeting them where they're at, and then their immediate response is going to be shelter. If somebody is willing to accept shelter, then they will send those referrals over. Last year, they referred about, they sent over 359 referrals. Not all of those are, some of those are the same person, can be referred multiple times, but if somebody doesn't qualify for the Navigation Center, then they're working with where is that person's support system? How can I connect them to services there? How can I refer them over to the county shelter? So of those 359 referrals, 285 were to shelters outside of Huntington Beach. So that could be domestic violence shelter, that could be family shelter, or a county shelter. So everybody is screened before they are able to have an intake into our Navigation Center.
So you vet everybody properly, and then wherever it is better suited for them, you send them there. So you do have places, especially for women. There's a lot of domestic abuse. So do you have women's shelters specifically?
We do, yes. We have a lot of resources that we can access, and sometimes with trying to refer somebody to one of those shelters, we have to call over and over and over again. And so our social workers, they know who to call. They will sit there, they will make those calls. Those calls can be difficult. They can take an hour for an intake process of having to talk about everything you've been through. So our social workers will stay right next to somebody through that process and help them along.
Every step of the way.
Every step of the way.
Now, I know we had, for example, a gentleman downstairs maybe a couple of weeks ago where he was supposed to be, his placement was out in the county and not in Huntington Beach, but our Huntington Beach Homeless Task Force stepped in, and they actually took him out to the homeless shelter he was supposed to be at. So not only do you guys help people here locally, you do go out of your way to make sure people have the services and they can get to where they need to be.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's really good to hear, because you know, a lot of people are upset because of the homeless issue, and it's not so much that we're heartless. We want to help people, but a lot of people don't know how many resources are out there, and you guys have so many resources that you've shared with us as we've been discussing back and forth, that I'm sure the community would be amazed at all the work you do and everything that you offer. Now, staying on the topic of our Navigation Center, what's the current capacity, and what would the intake process be for our Navigation Center?
So we are currently at 93%. We have a few couples beds open, so that's why we have been staying between 93 and 97% capacity. So we are pretty full. However, our social workers do come in and they help case conference with Mercy House, who is our operator of our Navigation Center. And so we're really, it's not a shelter. A shelter is just a place you can lay your head. Mm-hmm. It is somewhere that you go, that you can stay, but it's a Navigation Center. So that means anybody coming in there, it's with the goal that they're going to move to permanent housing. So one of the requirements of our program is that you're meeting with your housing navigator, you're setting goals, and you're taking steps forward to get out of the situation and get somewhere more stable. The intake process to get in there, you would have to go through our social workers or our task force officers. Typically with our task force officers, it's people that they're finding when they're out and about. With our social workers, they can do a referral from, you know, a hot spot in the community where there's people needing to go in, or you can access them through office hours. So they provide office hours Tuesdays at the police department from 9 to 11 and Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's a place where we have somebody there ready. You can come in, you can get screened, you can get connected to resources. They also are at different churches in the community that are providing services. So if there's a place where there's a lot of people who may be needing help, our social workers are also going there and setting up a table and being ready to help them out. And you can also call into our outreach line. So that's 714-536-5576, and you can get connected to one of them that way.
Okay. Now, another comment that we do receive a lot is they say, well, the Navigation Center's empty, nobody's ever there, we don't see anybody there. Actually, that's a good thing. that
Right.
people believe that, because one of the goals in having the navigation center is so that it wouldn't be disruptive to the residents and community members. And we don't see people lined up out there because that's not the way it works. So what we were told is the police department are they the ones that transport people to the navigation center? Is that why we don't have lines of people out there waiting to come in?
So our social workers transport, our police officers transport. If somebody has a car, they can drive on and off. The shuttle will also pick people up when we're doing a referral. But we have a good neighbor policy, so you can't walk on and off the property. You have to be driven in and out. Once you're there, if you don't have a car, they do provide a shuttle service. So the shuttle leaves 4 times a day. If you're needing to leave for work, they will help accommodate that. If you're needing to leave for appointments, if you just want to be out for the day, you can take that shuttle out 4 times a day and then get picked up to come back in 4 times a day. But we do respect that good neighbor policy and make sure that all the residents in the area also feel safe. And from what I'm told, there has not been really any complaints from the residents in the area.
We have not, and that's why when they say there's nobody over there, we don't know, it's empty. It's a good thing. It's you guys seem to have everything under control. So how would somebody make our homeless team aware that there's somebody in need of either services or shelter?
If you think somebody is needing immediate attention or maybe they're in crisis, I would call police dispatch and they will send out the appropriate party, whether that be Well or an officer. So that number is 714-960-8825. But if you think it's somebody who could benefit from getting connected to resources or services, then you'll want to go through our city social workers. And I would call 714-536-5576, or they can come into office hours.
Okay. Now, another thing that the residents have said, because we're a very tight-knit community, and the
Absolutely.
community likes to help. They said, what can we do to help? What could a resident do to help our homeless task force?
So one thing that I don't recommend doing is taking it upon yourself to approach people and to go out and offer help in that way. We have people who are trained and professionals that are doing the work. So connect with us. We have our HB Cares program. It's a volunteer program. Anybody can join it. I think that we are looking for people who can come into the Navigation Center right now and looking for more people to answer our phone line. So you could do that by either going on the website and finding us that way or calling that number that I mentioned. Another way would be to donate. So one of the services that we provide is we'll relocate or reunify people with family. If somebody is not from here and all their family is maybe in another state and it didn't work out for them here and they want to reconnect with their family, there's a coast-to-coast nonprofit that takes collections, so we can use those funds to help people reunify with their family. We also use those funds for preventative. So we've used them to pay, the utilities for a senior. We've used them to pay a month when somebody had an accident, was out of work and got behind, so that they don't end up on the streets. They can stay in their housing, they can get back on their feet. So that's through Coast to Coast, and you just click on Huntington Beach, and that's a way to donate. Another way would be to talk to your local groups. Maybe you're part of a church, or maybe you're part of a different group in the community. We do have a very caring community here. We have a lot of local faith-based organizations that help us out quite a bit. And one of the things that our care coordinator does is she puts on quarterly collaborative meetings where a lot of our local faith-based groups and nonprofits come in, and we learn about the services we're all doing, what the gaps are, and how we can fill them. So I would talk to your local church or talk to your local group, come to those meetings and see what other people are doing and how you can get involved.
So we are one of the first cities to employ our own local social workers. What are the benefits of that?
So one of the benefits is that continuity of care. Because we have our own city social workers, people are seeing the same face every time. They're out there building those relationships. It takes a lot of trust to let somebody come alongside you and work towards permanent housing. It's a lot of steps that go into it. So because they have the same consistent faces, that trust is being built. There's a lot of nonprofits also doing the work, and they're doing great work, but there is high turnover, and we don't have that here. We have very skilled social workers who are very knowledgeable about our local resources and connected to a lot of our community, our faith-based groups, our nonprofits, the hospital social workers, the school social workers. They've had time to build those relationships up, and they're here every day, Monday through Friday.
So the consistency and the relationship building will gain you the trust that you need to get them the help that they need.
Exactly.
Okay. And on the Navigation Center, what are some of the services that are provided in the Navigation Center?
So at the Navigation Center, again, one of the things that you're working on is permanent housing. You're working on stability. You're working on moving forward from your situation. So they have housing navigation services. They will connect you to homeless court. We have our volunteers coming in and they're providing resume building and job skill activities. They're doing fun activities like bingo and karaoke and different art classes. They are doing, we recently we have a licensed marriage and family therapist who's volunteering her time with us. So she's coming in and doing group therapy sessions. She's doing, de-escalation or grief and loss groups and different things we want to really give people the tools that they need. So when they do move on their journey and they do become stable and housed, they can assimilate back into society.
Okay, so what can we as council members do to help you continue to do the work that you guys are doing here in Huntington Beach?
Well, you've been incredibly supportive, and that support goes a very long way. We have support from our entire council, and that is absolutely huge. I would just continue to support us and provide advocacy for funding from federal, state, and from local officials.
Well, thank you so much for what you're doing. I remember when we were first campaigning, the top issue was homelessness, and people are not talking about it as more, and that speaks volumes to all the work that you guys have been doing and how much safer downtown is and cleaner and nicer, and we are a tourist city. So when you have people coming down our main street, and before it wasn't safe for them to come, it really affected us. So thank you so much for what you're doing. You guys are helping us in more ways than one.
Thank you so much.
Jessica, thank you so much for joining us and for all your hard work. And thank you all for joining us. And we will see you at the next Mayor's Roundtable.